Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're watching on YouTube, you can find out more about what we do at officehours.global. Our first hour is general discussion about media and virtual production. Second hour is usually something we want to spend a little bit more time on. Today, we're going to talk about potentially covering NAB Fall, New York. So we'll take a look at that and figure out what we want to do or what we might want to do and what we've learned from the past. So we'll talk about that in the second hour. So if you have questions or comments about that, go ahead and throw them into Makana. And also a reminder that Bill Davis here will be talking about Final Cut at noon. So if you want, that's going to be an after hours, and it's turning out to be a great session. So noon and after hours, Bill Davis will be talking about Final Cut. Also, education returns. It's the school year, so we're bringing back the education. So that's the second hour of Saturday. So Saturday, second hour, we're going to talk about education there. And then also a reminder that in after hours on Saturday morning, we will be, Hasmukh and Damyanti are back when we're talking about cooking. So take a look at the email that went out for more details. All right, let's go ahead and jump into the questions. Mitch, what do we have?
Thank you, Alex. Our first question in from Adrian Allback in Brisbane, Australia. Some camera operators prefer to use monochrome mode in the electronic viewfinder. What are the advantages of doing this?
Go ahead, John.
I've always preferred it. It's really easy to find the focus. So when you're in focus, it's very, very clear. It's going to pop out. It's going to be very distinct from anything else. If I'm just operating the camera, I don't have to worry about color. That's a way for me to just focus on what my subject is, make sure I'm in focus, and I can kind of take it from there, let the back-end guys take care of the color and everything else that matters.
Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
Everything that he just said, I agree with wholeheartedly. I will say that back in the early days of television, there was a black and white signal that was high resolution, and they kind of bolted color onto it, and it really did drop the ability to see really clearly fine detail. So even though that's gone by and digital signals are much better, I think a lot of us have the habit of going to black and white when we're looking for absolute resolution, clarity.
And in broadcasting, a lot of the professional cameramen, they'll punch into the red channel, for instance, when they're shooting golf or football, because then you get a white ball on black grass.
Yep. And, one of the big things with black and white is that the focus assist, which is oftentimes a red hue, the focus assist sticks out really nice and clearly over a black and white image. Next question.
Next question in from Vincent Alvarez in Bellingham, Washington. Any opinion on Amazon's first exclusive Thursday night football coverage? The graphic package, quality of broadcast signal, both were highly criticized in my household.
Good, Sky.
Well, again, it's a platform that's trying to make customers happy, and consequently, you're going to see a lot more of these live events because that's the one opportunity they have to do something new and unique versus a thing they have to create and pre-produce. So while there's a lot of pre-production going on, I know you're discussing the graphics and they're going to modify that as they go along. But that Amazon is getting into live events, I'm not surprised at all because that's where the eyeballs are and that's where they can sell advertising.
Go ahead, Bill.
Also, I think that the whole idea of, it used to be that you perfected a program and then you sent it out. And I wish they still did that a lot. But right now, we're in this environment where you put a show up and you refine it and try to get better at it. Specifically, Apple, who is now a juggernaut in the content creation, their first programs were awful. I remember watching their first carpool karaoke and some things. They're going, you've stolen an idea and you're not executing it real well. Why are you doing this? Well, what they were doing was iterating and building out their system and getting better. And then here we are 3 or 4 years later, and they're winning Emmys and Oscars and things. So it's just a process.
Yeah, I watched pieces of it last night. I don't know if I would, other than the first down marker, the first down thing where it says first and, fourth, whatever on the field where they map it on the field. And I think they're using the Amazon like smiley face as the arrow, which I found to be a bit garish. Like I was just like, really? It's like that was a little too much. But outside of that, I actually thought, so at first when I saw it, when I first saw the graphics, I was like, oh, I don't know if I really like these, but they've kind of grown on me. There's a lot of subtlety in the graphics that I didn't see at first, that they're using, really complex keys to make that actually work. I found that the stream itself, I was watching it on this screen right here while I was doing some other work. I thought it was really good. Like it was one of the clearer versions of a football game that I had. So I'm not sure if it was just my signal or what it should look like, but it looked clearer than And I will admit that I watch this. You may be comparing to broadcast. I watch YouTube TV all the time, and YouTube TV looks really good. The Amazon stream I felt did look sharper than what I'm used to watching on YouTube TV. I believe that it is a 4K stream, so I think that it actually I felt like it looked really good as far as that goes. So I don't know the graphics package. As I said, when I first saw it, I was like, But as I've watched it, I was like, oh, okay, it's pretty nice. I will say that after watching a CBS game covering the Steelers on Sunday, I would say that the Thursday night game is twice as good as the camera work, the graphics for CBS were substandard as far as I'm concerned, and
Wow.
half of Thursday night football's quality. I was as a Steeler fan, that does broadcast. I was pretty disappointed with what CBS is doing. So I felt like the commentary, the graphics, the camera work, pretty much all of that was not as good like as Thursday night football. So anyway, next question.
I have a question. It's been reported that nearly 40.
I'm sorry, I skipped Bill. We got into talking about it, and I skipped Bill. Did you have any last notes, Bill?
No, I don't think I had any notes on it. No, I'm done.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, next question. It's been reported that nearly 40 Starlink satellites were destroyed by a CME event in February. What does this mean for the future of Elon Musk's Starlink service?
Go ahead, Peter.
Well, the fact of the matter is all satellites are exposed to CME events during the launch phase, which is when the destruction occurred. It causes the actual atmosphere to thicken up as a reaction and increases the drag. And those 40 satellites didn't achieve orbit. So I'm sure they just, scheduled the next ones in to replace. But, this is the function of very low Earth orbit satellites, of which Starlink is the largest example, but there are many other ones out there. And I don't know if you've ever looked at or read about what the satellites have to do to guard themselves against CME events in general. Our communications and our electrical grid are just like magnets to that kind of stuff to cause problems. So,
Go ahead, Mitchell.
I think they're the lowest orbiting satellites around the Earth, and I begin to question whether or not he's literally making disposable satellites, and they just launch them as fast as they can.
This is actually how they're absolutely designed as disposable satellites. Like that is the design function, is that, there's a certain number of them. They're designed to deorbit at times. They're designed to, they're not designed to stay up there for, tens of years as some of the other ones have. And that's the nature of, what they're building, very small and disposable satellites. So the question of CME, though, I'll see if I can find it. There's about 192-page document from a conference that was done, I think in 2014 or maybe 2012 by NASA and a couple other partners. We shouldn't worry about how CMEs are going to affect Starlink. We should really be continually thinking about how CMEs, we've not seen a major CME in our lifetime. We've seen some little glitches. The last major one that we know of was the Carrington event in 1859, and the telegraph offices caught fire. Like, these are telegraph offices. Just to make sure you're clear, the lines to the telegraph offices, heated up and everything else. That is a major CME event, but what we don't know is whether that CME event was a big one or a little one, or whether it was a side. We don't know what the scale was. We know that the aurora borealis was seen in Cuba. There's a lot of things that could happen. The reason we don't know is because we didn't have electricity until, that was running around, like telegraph and so on and so forth. Telegraph was the only connected wire points that we had in 1859 to show us what could happen. Before that, it could have just been, something that our ancestors said, oh, there's a lot of light in the sky, and then they made they made Stonehenge or whatever based on it, or whatever that is. They reacted to it. The CMEs have a potential of taking out huge chunks of technology, like all of it. like potentially, so right now it's a nice light show and we lose a couple satellites, but we could lose all of our GPS satellites. We could have planes fall out of the sky. We could have, there's a lot of things that we shouldn't think about CMEs as they relate to. They're probably, I got into this because I was talking to someone in DC that manages risk for the government, and it's definitely something they think about a lot. It's not like something that they're not paying attention to. Go ahead, Peter.
Well, I was going to go back to the initial point that Mitch made. I mean, these are running in very low Earth orbit by design. I mean, it's physics. It's the only way they can get the latency down the way they get down to. So they have to run very close to, if not into the troposphere. So they're really down low.
Right.
That's the design point. I mean, if you put them up in the geosynchronous case, you can kiss your latency goodbye.
Well, to put it in perspective, yeah. I mean, that's what keeps their latency so low, but it also puts them at risk in the environment. We had a satellite that measures a lot of solar winds and so on and so forth out there that got hit by a CME that didn't hit the Earth. It was far enough away, and I asked the person that I was talking to about, like, what if it hit the Earth? And he goes, it could be like half the population of the Earth. And he said, how fast will we recover? And he's like, we wouldn't. Like there's not a recovery point from that, and that just missed the Earth, And so we want to keep paying attention to it, and I admit it's why I continue to. I don't change my lifestyle. I'm not a foil hat kind of person, so I feel like you just do what you're going to do. But I do know how to grow things, and I know how to cook things as a result of that conversation about a decade ago. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, it's bad, but it could be a little badder, but not so bad. And the point I'm trying to make is that the sun CME or the flare needs to be pointed at the Earth because it can point 360 degrees and then some around a sphere. And the other thing is the Earth has to be rotated in the direction that faces. So everything would have to line up for it to be a really bad event.
Yeah, and the statistic is 12% chance a decade that'll happen. Next question.
The Seventh Scroll in Brooklyn, New York. Morning, guys. Thoughts on this product? And there's a link there to a viewfinder for your iPhone 14.
Go ahead, Tom.
Well, previously I've used the Zacuto close-up lens on a 5D series camera from Canon. Here they're doing it with the iPhone. And talk about a piece of engineering. I don't know where it, where you stop with this thing, but I can tell you that looking at it and how they've got the little trap door so that you can get to the touch screen and so forth, it has an MSRP of $499, but they're giving it 40% off at $299 if you sign up quickly. Me, I'm going to stick with the small rig cage.
Go ahead, Bill.
For me, it depends on, I don't use my iPhone the same way I would use a regular camera. I don't often hold it to my face and just shoot like that for long periods. If I had a use case where I did that, I might consider something like this, particularly if I was in a ridiculously highly lit area and I wanted to be real careful and monitor on my phone. My use case is mostly I use my phone on the end of a monopod. I like to be able to get high and get low. And so the idea of bolting on a viewfinder, an optical viewfinder on the phone is just useless to me in that circumstance. Also, the screens on the iPhones get better and better, so you can see them clearly at distance. So I don't need to get really close to do the kind of things that this product does. So again, if your use case is right, I can see it being a useful product for you, but I would never pull it out of the closet and put it on in my regular shooting. That's just my practice.
Yeah, go ahead, Sky.
If you do need this tool, to Bill's point, if you do need it, Zacuto's history is rock solid. I mean, they've been making gear like this for a very long time, so I'm sure it's made of good quality and it will last you if you do need it.
Next question.
Next question. Oh, sorry.
All right, Bill. Guy Cochran in Seattle, USA. Where do you envision insert studios proliferating into the future?
Go ahead, Bill.
I think that's going to be a big change because we all now have insert studios, something close to it. Now, a technical insert studio used to be a little place in most towns where if you were going to appear on CNN, they could send you to that studio. It normally had good lighting, a solid camera, maybe a green screen background or some other kind of pull-in background, so that somebody who doesn't normally run an operation where you can become video aware and go on to the big network. But more and more, we're building these in our homes, and we've even had talk about home builders putting in media rooms that are designed for Zoom and this kind of home broadcasting. So I think they're going to become less popular in the future. There will still be a place for them, particularly as technology advances. But I think it's going to be the business model is going to be variable, I think.
Yeah, go ahead, Mitchell.
I'm with Bill on this. I think that our rooms here on office hours could potentially be insert studios because of the level of quality and sound quality and lighting and background and so forth. A politician or a CEO could certainly walk into this room. And I've encouraged, there's a couple of my corporate clients that are in the same building I'm in. I said, come on over and do your part, because they were complaining about the quality of their laptop doing a Zoom meeting. I said, you could sit down here and do an insert. So there may be a business model or certainly a courtesy model for doing that.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I built 3 of them here at the office here, and it really came down to how efficient is the time to travel to an insert studio, or how many times have we got on a plane and head to New York to go do a bunch of shows, and then a world event happens, a president tweets something, whatever it is, and all of a sudden you're getting bumped and all that time is wasted. So for us, it just became much simpler to build out the studios here and then just let our people and our talent use it as needed versus sending us anywhere. Even driving 30 minutes means that at least an hour of my CEO's time is now being wasted just on the road, and it's just not worth it.
Yeah, Sky.
I think John's example is where I was going to go, because that's what I had seen recently, is that because they've got extra office space, because they don't have humans coming into it, they don't want to go, the 30 minutes down the street to in somebody else's place when they're already paying rent on the office space. And the barrier to entry is not the tens of thousands of dollars. It's it should be tens of thousands, but again, they will want to get by. So I'd be curious, John, what price point do you think you spent on each room?
I'd rather not share.
Awesome. Very good.
We can talk about it after hours, but
copy that.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Peter.
But I'm just thinking, yes, that the corporations are going to be adding them into their office space.
Go ahead, Peter.
I just want to go back to something that Bill said, which is I know from conversations with Nigel, our sometimes panelist with us here, who he actually has started to build what you're calling these insert studios in people's homes as they go, and fitting them out completely.
Yeah.
So that, there is a proper, unlike, at least in my case, I hacked together my old home office into something. It's a purpose-built room with all the right lighting and stuff to go with it.
Yeah, John.
Fenwick Keenan and I interviewed Homer Hickam last week, and Homer has a studio set up in his house with the little rockets behind him and stuff. He sounded great. He didn't look the best, but he sounded fantastic. And he's doing a ton of interviews from his house now with all the related rocketry stuff that's going on. And we did an interview with them on Zoom. It came out great.
I think that there's a lot of there's a lot of opportunity for people to build them in their house, to build them into their offices. That already happens. If a company called Media 3 has a subsidiary called Live Hits, and they do that out of New York. But they send these kits that are PTZs with lighting and talkback and everything else, over to lots and lots of financial institutions and other things that have to get hits all the time. So I think it's absolutely right that people are going to put them in their homes. We're also going to see people, have them in their offices. I think it's nuts not to have a couple hit. Every major office building for a large company should have one of these in it, so no one's even crossing campus and possibly getting shiny while they walk in. They should never have to leave air conditioning to get to their studio. But I think that there is an opportunity. We looked at this before COVID, of putting these into WeWork. You know, like, so we had some discussions with WeWork, and then they went down and I think partnered with Cheddar or something like that instead, and that was kind of a disaster. But that was kind of WeWork. So but what we looked at is you have all these small companies that are co-loing in a big place like that, and they don't have the money to spend $50,000 on something that can make them look nice, but they could spend $300 for they want to do a live stream. So I think when we think about an insert, we should not think about hits. We should think about giving them the tools they need to do a presentation. So if they want to be on and do a presentation into a Zoom event or something like that, they can get there and they have they can do this and they can do slides and they can, so they have telestration and slides and things there that make it something that's more interactive. That's the kind of thing that is a little bit more complicated to build into their office. And that's the thing that if it was at the right price, they'll pay $300 for an hour or $200 for an hour, $500 an hour to have this thing that looks nice, and the background can either be something physical. In DC, we built a modular system that was based on magnets, so you could literally just snap things behind them, or just roll in a screen either way. Or pull a green screen in. So we could do any of those things, and the green screen was lit, and we were using an Ultimate for that, and there's a couple different ways that you could do that, and I do think that there's a business there. I think that the issue is that we have to take full advantage of the technologies. It has to be able to not only connect to broadcast, so be on the switch or LTN or both, but it has to be able to seamlessly connect to Zoom. It has to be able to connect to Skype. It has to be able to connect to Teams. Any of these things and it's not a big deal. I also think that most of the tech has to be run remotely. So if you look at like Bloomberg is a good example. Their studios in Hong Kong have one tech that sits there and just kind of puts the mic on and does the things. It's all run out of London, or at least it was, when I was there. And so it's all run out of London, and they have PTZ cameras, and they have control of the lights, they have control of everything else, they have IFB. But I think the possibility that we have now, if you look at things like EasyCast and Zoom ISO and so on and so forth, we have the ability to control all the lights and all the other things in a very modular sort of way. We don't have to have it as industrial as it used to be. So I think that there's a huge opportunity for these, because more and more people are going to want to jump into Zoom and do things, but they're not ready to show their living room, and they're not ready to spend $1,000, let alone, for one hit. That $1,000 will get them a very good look. It'll be okay, but it's not going to be competitive with other people that are doing it. And as people realize that it needs to be really important and they need to look good, they're going to go to inserts. And I think we can make them a lot smaller and a lot more prevalent. So I think that there's a big business. I mean, we've spent a lot of time doing math about insert studios, and I think that there's a massive business there. And I think it's more readily available to us now than it ever has been. Next question.
Marcelo Moyano in New Jersey. It's Apple launch day. Did any of you get the new iPhone delivered yet? I was going to pick it up in New York City, but I don't want to wait in line a lot.
Noon. 12:30. 12:30. I'm going to be at the Apple store picking up my iPhone. So that's all I can say. I ordered it. It was the fastest, so I had to wait another week if I was going to do it any other way. Go ahead, Peter.
I was going to say, at least in Central Time Zone, they're still processing at the local UPS center right now, because I've been watching mine on my current phone. So it's a little early yet.
Yeah, exactly. Bill?
I was just noting, for those of you who may be interested but haven't popped in, I waited about 7 hours because I was really busy that Friday when they launched, and so mine doesn't arrive until the middle of October.
Yep.
Now.
I got. You can only pick it up on the 16th at 5:08. Go ahead, Tom. Oh, is that you're waiting? You're waiting for them to arrive? Can't hear you, Tom. Oh, we lost you, Tom. I can't hear you, Tom.
Oh,
there you go.
Okay.
That's your door. Waiting.
That's my front door.
Yeah,
waiting for the UPS guy. Mm-hmm.
I really, given that you're in this group, I really felt like 3 4K cameras, able to get from the street all the way in, everything else, and the one that is like the middle camera before he gets to the door should be 120 frames per second. So just.
And you got to go mic the UPS driver and follow him.
Yeah, it'll look like the I don't know if you've ever seen the slow motion Bill Murray thing walking down the hallway, but if you haven't, just search slow motion Bill Murray. Next question.
And it's from Steve Uroff in Madison, Wisconsin. Does the panel have a favorite single ear wired IEM inner ear monitor for video conferencing use?
Go ahead, Sky.
I posted the dual ear because it was from Amazon, and I got away from what was originally recommended when we first started this experience was the single ear, which has a very hard plastic, and this is the very expensive version that I was recommended here. But once I moved over to these, yes, it is dual ear. Use it for video conferencing, and it's much more comfortable. And the quality is, I appreciate it much better.
Bill?
And I use the in-ear, it comes to you in a package like this. They're very, very tiny. In fact, I don't know if you can see it, but this little hair-like thread is the only thing attaching my IEM to the 3.5 millimeter plug-in. And they're completely unseeable, I think, because they fit down in the ear really amazingly well.
Yeah, for some reason I now can't. I've used Ear Hero. I think does make a single ear version of what they do. Although that because the way it's set up, you can it's very, very low key, and then it goes in and you can have it so you can still hear everything around you. So there's not really any reason to not have it in stereo. The other one that competes with them, that an ear is the other one that they say that they're both the same, and I can never keep that name in my head. It's like a bee, but I can't remember. My head will there's no shelf for it. I don't know if someone can tell us what that is in the event chat, but
Bumblebee.
Bumblebee. For some reason that just will not stay in my head. Anyway, Bumblebee is the other one that I think might have one, but a lot of times, as I said, you can hear. The best thing is a stereo version of it where you can actually hear the outside world as well. Go ahead, Mitchell.
I was just going to say, I had the 215 Shores, and they're probably not the very best to have, but I was trying to get my feet wet. Is it, depending on how it fits on my ear, it does weird things with the EQ. Like it's like the phase, and
right.
And I'm constantly pushing this one in. And even with the comfy earbuds, it's not quite what I want.
Next question.
Next question comes from Bo Cordell in Charleston, South Carolina. I've got a 42-inch LG monitor several office hours folks have. Is there a controller or API that would allow me to quickly change quad box and input presets without having to stumble through the menu system?
Go ahead, John.
You could potentially program like a series of commands with IR to replicate what you're doing on the remote to actually set those commands. But I did not see any sort of API or way to interact with the monitor. If you're starting to get into that, you're looking into like a Crestron type system that you could actually program like a switcher scaler that would be able to do the same thing as that 42-inch box, but also give you the command control that you're looking for.
Yeah, and Guy had recommended the global cache IP to IR tech TCP IP or IR to IR converter. So that's going to take you got a Ethernet to the IR, and now you could probably that'd be kind of a fun lab for us to do, but you could point it at the TV and theoretically, if it's something the controller can do, it should be something that you could figure out how to do where you're just pushing literally something on a Stream Deck and it would change. Next question.
From Douglas Carmichael, the house where I'm living in rural New Hampshire has Spectrum cable, which works very well. With all this talk about Starlink, could it be useful as a backup if Spectrum cable fails and with a router that can auto switch from one to the other?
Go ahead, Bill.
If you're on mission critical having to do things, then having a backup is never a bad idea, I don't think. And to me, though, I've come to understand that Spectrum cable is one thing for one house and it's another thing for another house. There's so many wires between you and the central office that your particular circumstance may not relate to anybody else's. It's great. I've had good luck with my Spectrum. I had months where my AT&T at my former place was perfect, and then I had months where it wasn't so perfect. And when they rewired us for fiber, it was much more stable. So the age of the infrastructure reaching your house and how you're connecting is going to have a lot. And I think it's going to be individual, person to person, area to area, city to city, even state to state.
Go ahead, John.
I would ask your local community, see if anybody else is using Starlink, understand what the bandwidth is in the area, just so you can understand would it be viable for you, as well as looking into 5G options. Like my 5G option is actually better than my cable connection, just because I'm so close to the tower.
All right, yeah, go ahead, Peter.
I was going to say this. I lived through this problem here at the beginning of the week, or actually starting Saturday, when I was working in my yard and I suddenly felt something drape across my back. After I got over thinking it wasn't a snake, realizing it wasn't a snake, it was in fact a squirrel had chewed through the fiber optic line from my pole, and it had fallen onto my back. So now I was, without my fiber connection, and my backup was my phone, but it's a 5G. It was a 5G. It's a hotspot, 5G hotspot. So, like John was just saying, sometimes 5G can be better. Now, it wasn't better than my 1 gig symmetrical Ethernet fiber coming into the house, but it was passable, because it took AT&T 2 days to get somebody here to restring about 140 feet worth of fiber optic cable, because it's non-trivial exercise.
And remember that with Starlink, you really have to be able to see the whole sky. Like it is, as I was testing it, I had a small sliver that I couldn't see of the sky, and I lost connectivity, every 45 minutes.
Well, the other thing you have to watch out for. The other thing you have to watch out for is, like, I cannot have Starlink in my neighborhood. We can't have dishes in our neighborhood because of homeowners association's rules say you can't have satellite dishes on the roof or anywhere. So, this is completely non sequitur, but for some random reason, there are 5 houses in my street that are not on the homeowners association, and I'm one of them. So it's like this funny thing where I don't know how that happened. Like, I bought into it. It's not like I did anything, but somebody who did this was really smart. Like they just somehow, we have all the benefits of being homeowners association. We are not, no rules. So anyway, go ahead, Mitchell.
Well, Peter, with your luck, you'd get the Starlink, and then you'd have to watch out for flying squirrels.
Yeah, exactly. Next question.
Alex, 4D Gulner in London, UK. There's a long line of folks waiting to visit Queen Elizabeth's coffin lying in state. Instead of setting up a special website, the UK government have set up a stream on YouTube with live info at this link, and we're interested in comments.
Go ahead, John.
I think it's great that they're just using technology that everyone has and is easy to find, discoverable. It'd be sad to see them stand up some sort of website last minute. Obviously, there's a lot of planning that goes into this, but it needs to make sure that it's very secure. It can actually handle the load of people visiting it. Leveraging something like YouTube is very, very intelligent way to go about it. It just makes it much more accessible.
Yeah, Sky.
Yeah, very similar comments. I've been watching it since we started, and it's a very, very long line, much longer than your iPhone. But I'm just wondering about the feeling of community that's going on around there, because they're all sharing this same experience. But it's a really long line, and I love what John pointed out is it's technology that is able to handle that many people looking at it. It's also that the government has been forward thinking enough that it's the Department for Digital Culture, Media, and Sport. So consequently, they're training their audience, i.e. the country. This is a thing that we're going to be able to, be in communication with you. And so I think it's a good wetware opportunity as well.
When they show the close-ups of the live feed that, actually at the state, I don't know what the rules are. I guess one of the guards fell over yesterday. I don't know what the rules are, whether they have to stay there the whole time and they haven't had any sleep, but they show close-ups of them and it looks like they are in some crazy pain. They're not like young spring chickens, and they've been standing there for a long time, but it looks like it doesn't look like it's an easy job. Whatever they're doing there and however long they're staying, it seems like a lot of work. But to go back to this, I think it's fine. I think it's good that they put some information out. I do think it'd be interesting. If I was in London right now, I'd probably be tempted to go down that line and literally do a live stream 8 hours a day of people just talking about what the Queen means to them. Like it's just you have a whole bunch of people that the Queen meant something to them because it's important enough for them to sit in a 3-mile line. I mean, if there was a relatively medium-sized line to heaven, I'd probably not get there. I'm just not a line guy. So anyway, so when I look at a 3-mile line, I mean, I look at 10 people in line and I go, oh, I don't think I can do that anymore. so I think that a 3 mile line, those people are really committed to what they're to doing this, and I think that you could literally just walk around with a live view and a camera and just walk down and have people tell their story about what that is, and there'd be other people that would want to watch that, that would just sit there, other people that the Queen means something to, that would be from all over the world, that would love to see what people kind of attribute to that. That's the only thing I would add to that, I think. Next question.
In from Greg Greckmeyer in Topping, Virginia. Thanks, folks. I now watch shows looking for cuts, dissolves, and effects. When would it be appropriate to use dissolves in live programs?
Go ahead, Mitchell.
I'm a cuts-only guy. I like to say use cuts only when you can. Even jump cuts today are in style. But the only real reason you would use a dissolve on a show would be when you're, or a production, is when you're changing scenes, time is passing, or other things. It's meant to be there for a reason, and you just don't use a dissolve in general.
Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, Mitch noted it. Dissolve was the traditional way you indicated the passage of time between two scenes that you're transitioning between. Of course, it's changed its meaning over the course of time, and now it's really more an aesthetic choice. If you want to just keep people in the show, cuts are well done, are transparent to the viewer, and everybody's used to jumping around through cuts. But aesthetically, sometimes if I'm doing something where I want the audience in a kind of a dreamlike pace, watching imagery flow together, then that softer transition of some sort of a cross dissolve or dip to something dissolve can be a better aesthetic choice. But it's now just art, not language that you must follow.
Next question.
Next question from Douglas Carmichael. What vendors do you prefer for affordable studio furniture? I'm going to be refitting my uncle's old office, and I'm looking for a desk that can fit a 24-channel mixer or 61-note keyboard.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
If you're looking for something affordable, our very own Brandon Buttram is outfitting his new studio, and he went to Home Depot and bought the Husky desk, which is about a 72-inch desk that can be raised and lowered for little less than $300. It's the bargain of the century.
Go ahead, Sky.
I've seen that Husky desk at my Home Depot. And they've got a white version, and then I think they also have a dark wood version. But I was going to say IKEA. I've outfitted a lot of studios with almost disposable furniture, but it's very robust as long as you're not moving it a lot. But yeah, IKEA.
Yeah, a lot of times sometimes we'll resurface IKEAs. Like we'll get a IKEA tabletop or a table and then replace the top, or we'll get the IKEA tabletop and then put something rougher on underneath it to make it more heavy. And we've done. I think that the number one place that we've gotten stuff when we don't have custom furniture made has been IKEA. Next question.
Next question isn't for me, and the question is, if you had to light a 10 by 30 foot green screen, what light fixtures would you use?
Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
So the traditionals for large sites, and that's reasonably large, are either large bank fluorescence arrayed there. A lot of people use these kind of barrel lights. Let's see if I can pull it up on stage. Oops, up on screen. Looks like I can't. I thought my camera was connected, but it's obviously not. They are round kind of barrels with a very high intensity. Some of them have half black over one side, but they throw light out in all directions. And I've seen lots of psych studios that use these large, very bright circular fixtures to just throw light in all directions and make it real even.
Yeah, I mean, I have to admit that even though I moved almost everything to LEDs, to Bill's point, I still use mostly banks of 4x4s, KinoFlow 4x4s, because they have what we need. And if you look carefully, you can get green bulbs for them. And these are what we call green on greens. And you have to have enough separation between you and the green screen to make a 10 by 30 work, because green on green is very dangerous if you don't have the proper flagging, because it means it's pushing green light right onto you. But if you get it right, what it does is it gives you a very pure green that is sitting behind you, and you actually don't need very much light to do it. And then and so either, on a 10 by 30, we'd either put them on the sides here. Now what we do is we don't point, the mistake everybody makes is they point this one like this and this one like this on their corners, and then you end up with something that looks like this on your waveform. What you want to do is you have this one pointed to the far corner and this one pointed to the far corner. And then you look at it on a scope and you move them back and forth until it's even, on your lumiscope. The other way to do it is from the ceiling. If you have a grid, is to do it like this. Now, the further you can move these this way, the softer the light will be, and the less chance you're going to have things kind of building up in there. So having them out here, maybe 4 or 5 feet, and then they're coming down. And again, you're going to look at it. The only way to tune it is with a waveform. You want it to go about 70 across a luma waveform. You want it to go about 70 and straight. No fall off here unless you're okay with that. But this wants to be straight and a thin line. And if you can get that, then you're going to get a great key out of that. We used to have a 12 by 20, which is not that far away. And we had 2 4x4s on either side that I think we only used 2 bulbs on with green on green. And it lit perfectly. So that's what I'd recommend. Go ahead, Mitchell.
I'm glad to hear you say that Kino flow would be the way to go, because that's what I kind of had in mind. And I had asked Mickey, and he said that you can get those green bulbs, some even in LED. They look like fluorescent tubes, but they've got LEDs in them.
And I have to admit, I just haven't had to build one. So, I still have 2 4x4s that I use for these if I need them. So I haven't had to build a new one where I had to really think through LED lighting for this. So I just don't know.
Do they have barn doors on them?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the 4x4s come with barn doors. Yeah, Bill.
And I found the picture I was looking for. That's a studio that has those circular fixtures that throw out a lot of a very even wash of light. So those circular can do a really, really good key as well. You don't have the green possibility, but really good for large spaces.
They are, and they definitely get used a lot. The hard part is they do put out a light in every direction, and sometimes that gets more difficult. Next question.
Marcelo Moyano in New Jersey. Today, my internet connection went down. Any recommendations for a backup connection to have that works decent until the main one is restored?
Go ahead, Peter.
Well, it depends on where you are. In my case, I have an AT&T 5G hotspot that worked just fine, though you kind of have to manage it because it's not the same kind of data. They meter your data a little bit on that space. So, but it really depends on where you are, because you have to check out, in the case of telephony or cellular access, you have to check out the coverage map for the carrier to see, do you have decent signal or not? We already talked about Starlink earlier as a potential option if your homeowners association allows the dishes.
Yeah, exactly.
And there was a days gone by years ago when for my work I needed backup in my house for real work. I had an ADSL line and my cable company coming into a modem that would automatically switch between the two. So that, because no sense of humor at work.
Good, Scott.
Originally, yes, I had the Comcast cable or Xfinity is what it's called now. And then, yes, I've since added the fiber, which is called Ziply up here in the Pacific Northwest, much, much bigger bandwidth. But traditionally, yes, I've also have the AT&T hotspot on my phone. And so that has been my backup.
Yeah, I know that I have the Starlink that I've been testing, and again, it's not been perfect. So it's not something I would consider a hard backup for it. And a lot of it has to do, it'd probably be fine if I put it on my roof. It's just that I've been trying to avoid that because I want to be able to take it places and put it on a car. so I've been, but I may give up on that and just go ahead and put it on the roof. Anyway, or buy another mount, so I could do either. I had before that, when we were really doing production out of the house during the midst of COVID, I used a air fiber, so it was basically point to point microwave to another location, to another mountain. And where I was getting about 40 up and 40 down. So it wasn't the same as the Comcast one that I have now, but it was enough to, run shows. But we did have a problem that my air fiber happened to be right where where the turkey vultures like to sit on my roof. And so if a turkey vulture, it turned out, I finally figured it out. If they sat next to the air fiber, it was okay. But if they spread their wings in the sun, it would block my internet. So that was the only downside of that whole process. So it was just a very odd problem. Anyway, we've got a lot of turkey vultures here. Anyway, next question.
Svetlana in Belarus, Minsk. has a question. Have a good Friday. What does the job you're doing mean in your lives? It doesn't only have to be something you do with earning money and should cover the more life essential values, right?
Go ahead, Peter.
Well, I always said for years that a lot of people look at their job as a vocation. I looked at it as an avocation.
Right.
It was something I really liked doing, and it gave me fulfillment. Back in days when I was doing chip design, getting that chip working the way I wanted it to work and it to model correctly gave me a lot of satisfaction. Solving a puzzle, if you will. Later on, running data centers, the same type of thing. I often say I retired from the business because I got tired of the 2 a.m. Saturday morning phone calls when something didn't work. That's when it ceased being an avocation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, John.
I think of it, if you think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you can look it up. It really comes down to where are you at in your life? Do you have your psychological needs met? Do you feel safe? If you do, and if you are able to sustain that within a career, then I think you can really get into a job that maybe has more values for you. But if you're just worried about surviving, you're not in a position that you can just look for values. You're looking for feeding yourself, sheltering yourself. Those are the things we love to get past as people move through, feel better, feel happy, and then you can really find a job that's going to be satisfying for you.
You go, Bill.
What John said, if your kids are hungry, you'll do anything, and I think you should, and that's the way it is. If you have that luxury to be able to choose, I do have a resonance for picking your clients if you can. I did a job once a long time ago for a meat packing company, slaughterhouse, and I just didn't want to be in that environment anymore. After getting a little taste of the corporate culture, I said, no, this is not for me. I ended up spending most of my career at PetSmart doing a lot of training work for them, and that corporate culture really fit me well. I was able to work with a lot of dogs and cats. I am a pet guy. I like that. And I also found that the people I work with had that as part of their core values too. Famously, at least back in those days, PetSmart didn't sell dogs and cats. They gave space in their stores to adoption people to get homeless animals off the street. And I found that completely in alignment with my values. And it was great talking and working with those people. If you have the luxury, try to fit the people you work for into your value system. But if you got to feed your kids, do whatever you need to get it done.
Go ahead, Sky.
Yeah, I'm kind of chiming right in with John and Maslow's hierarchy. That really is a go-to matrix of helping you understand what is the need. Consequently, children were a need to be provided for. So consequently, I was, again, also very lucky to be in Southern California. So what I didn't recognize until just recently is that I'm a creative. No wonder I was so upset being in a corporate, follow the protocol issues, because I'm a kind of an entrepreneur. And so to be a follower, that's a challenge of self-evaluation of what is your makeup, and consequently the opportunity to survive is something that you need to figure out on your own.
Yeah, and I've talked about this before, but just really quickly, my whole life, whether it's been owning a company or being in a company or having a job, has always been a tank track, which is I can tell you what the three things are that I'm doing. This is where I'm trying to get to. This is what's paying the bills, and this is what I'm trying to get rid of. And when this all shifts down, now I have something paying the bills. Whatever was paying the bills, I'm trying to get rid of, and now I have a new goal of where I'm trying to get to. And I'm spending time on all of those. This one, I'm trying to reduce the time. This one, I'm trying to increase the time, but I'm never forgetting the one that pays the bills. So that's and that's just like and that's just how I kind of move through it. But that started with, shoveling manure. So I've come a long way on that tank track. Next question.
A. Mitchell's in Washington. What do people think for about Pelican's Vault series of cases compared to their other cases?
Let's do this one pretty quick. Go ahead, Bill.
They started this series, I think, in part for firearms, and they're secure. The thing I would watch out for is the weight to case ratio. You can get into the bigger cases, and they can be so heavy that if you're flying with a camera or something like that, the case itself can take up 3/4 of the weight limit on carry-ons unless you're on a commercial pass.
Yeah.
So.
They look good. I think that it definitely is, I think, an attempt to find a lower cost version of a lot of the stuff that they had before. This is kind of the price sensitive line that Pelican has. I would have a hard time now going to anything other than the standard ones because they don't stack well, and I need them to stack together. Like, so the hard part is the form factor becomes very important for me. Go ahead, Peter, real quick.
Well, I was just going to say, I made the mistake of for trying to use the Pelican Air cases for a while.
Yeah.
And they shatter.
Oh yeah, there you go. Yeah, I used an Air as a personal case, but then I found that I was getting all the trouble from TSA and from customs that I would get with a Pelican case, but no real value. Like, so I went back to, like I was like, oh, that doesn't help. Put my clothes in it. Next question.
Tony Mobley, Noonan, Georgia. The Shoot app now has the name Shoot Pro Webcam and Telestrator in its name. Has anyone used the new update?
I haven't. I've just been so busy. I haven't, but I'm really excited about what's going. The Shoot app is really coming along really quite nicely, and I believe that there's now a live, or they're working on live video. Michael's working on live video over, telestration over live video over an iPad with the pencil, and I haven't had time to test it yet, but I think that he's really moving along. So it's I'm excited to see where it goes. Tony, real quick.
Yeah, I just noticed that I'm looking at it, and it's sharing that it's used with the iPad, Apple Watch, and the phone.
Yeah.
HDMI, NDI, USB.
Yeah, it's great. Michael Forrest is part of our community, and it's exciting to see where he's taking this. We'll keep on talking about it. Maybe we'll get him on and have him at least. I don't know if we can do a whole 2 hour or a whole second hour on Shoot. I don't know if it has quite enough to do that, but we definitely should have him on for a segment. Maybe we have to show it, or we should show it. It's really, really cool. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael asks, what benefits do you gain moving from an HDMI workflow like an ATEM Mini to an SDI workflow, an ATEM SDI? How do you convert the output of a Mac to SDI?
Go ahead, John.
The benefit really is locked connections, better handshakes. The HDMI is known for losing sync with each other, so that can definitely cause issues within your workflow. The easiest way to convert for both your monitor side and your Mac side would be a bidirectional converter from Blackmagic. They're probably going to sell a ton of these to go along with the ATEM SDIs, which are great. Again, the biggest benefit is cable runs, long distance, size of the cable, plus the secure of plugging it in and actually locking to something versus an HDMI cable.
I just bought the new Extreme with SDI out, and the reason that I got it is because of the density for the deck links coming out of the Mac Mini for specifically Zoom ISO. So I can have 8 outputs coming out of one Mac Mini going into the ATEM, and I don't have to have any converters in between. And there's not really a place to do 8 HDMI outs. It's not something that's easy to create. The other thing that is a big advantage is now you can use routers. One of my big pain points with this whole process is really dealing with, I have an 8x8 matrix, but it's not the same as just having a 20x20 router, from Blackmagic. So I'm still on HDMI here. I have to admit that I'm on the verge of switching to, getting yet another one of these for my home office, just to go back to SDI. I mean, I feel like the HDMI thing has been great for the last couple of years, but I'm almost ready to give it up now that we have SDI versions, because it's the routing, it's getting stuff to lots of places that has just been super painful. Like, it's, HDMI is a consumer format, and we're trying to use it in professional environments, and it's not really working. Next question.
Stefan Fischer from Würzburg, Germany. On which fluid heads do you rely upon? What would be recommended for coverages like IBC or NAB?
Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
It depends on the load. For anything lightweight and easy and mobile, I tend to stick with Manfrotto only because I have all sorts of gear, little screws and things like that I've accumulated over the life of my career that all work with that system. So it's really easy for me to replace parts and things like that. On the upper end, I tend to go Sockler. If you have heavy cameras with teleprompters and things like that, they're a solid choice, as are O'Connor and Miller and some of the longtime tripod lines for heavier stuff.
Yeah, I tend to rent stuff once I start to actually need to do work. And usually I'm looking at O'Connor 2060 2060s or Sackler 2575s are the ones that I prefer. Sometimes I'll go down to a 1030, but after that, the other ones I just don't plan to do a lot of heavy work with. But if I actually want to do good pan and tilts and have someone have that kind of control, I want a really heavy head, and those are $15,000 fluid heads. I don't expect to buy them. I just rent them, so as needed, and then so I think that's for the fluid heads that we use in kind of a more pedestrian way. I use a lot of the Benros. I don't expect them to work at the same level as the bigger heads that we use, and they're like $500 for the sticks and the heads, and they seem to work. They seem to work pretty well. They can handle a reasonable amount of weight. So we've got a lot of those laying around the office for little things. And then when we do major things, though, we usually bring in bigger tripods that are going to have a lot more control and a much smoother, rating for. I will say that we'll see what happens. We're going to talk about this in a couple minutes, but with NAB, I don't think we're going to push a tripod around at NAB. So it depends on what team ends up showing up. But I think that we're going to try to see if we can't do it with a backpack, and maybe a monopod. But I don't think that that the tripod is super efficient in that area. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, I like the Sackler. I have the Activate head on it, and it's the Flowtech sticks. Sort of a medium weight, 25-pound, 30-pound load.
Next question.
Next question from James Babbitt in San Diego, California. Great second hour on holding viewers' attention. Could you show some examples of web pages that are skillful at holding viewer attention?
Go ahead, Sky.
I'm going to recommend the Vlog Brothers. Again, I'm not familiar with them, but they've been holding the people's attention now for quite a while. And they put out something and they're getting 120 to 200,000 views every time. So they have something figured out, and my daughter's working for them.
Very good. Yeah. And I would pay attention also. I mean, there's a lot of YouTubers that seem to be figuring out it. I don't know what the web page is, but they're figuring out how to do it online. And it's an amazing thing when you talk to creators about this, about the level of detail that they understand. They cut, recut, if you want to look at like someone who's really pushing the outer envelope, obviously from a size of viewership as well is definitely Track Mr. Beast. He has gotten that down to a science, and he's getting, 60 million views per video. and that's not done with one or two people that are kind of working their way through it. That's a staff of counted in tens of people, and multiple editors sometimes working on the same project at the same time, and a lot of A/B testing and so on and so forth. He's not doing anything by accident, so he's worth studying a little bit in that area. Go ahead, Sky.
I was just going to say the same thing. Yes, that's what my daughter is one of the 40 staff. And the other unique thing is she's based in Missoula, Montana. So consequently, You don't have to be in New York or Chicago or a major media hub.
Yeah, we should keep on tracking that. But the world of what we're doing is continuing to diffuse to all over the world, and which is really great for most of us. Next question.
Stefan Fischer from Würzburg, Germany asked, who have you ordered the new iPhone 14 Pro and why? If not, why not?
Go ahead, and we'll do this pretty quickly. Hashi?
The reason why is to replace a iPhone 7, so going to a 14 Pro, and it's a 512 for the size.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
I have my iPhone 6, and the reason I still have it is it has a headphone jack on it, and I don't take pictures.
You're not going to give away that headphone jack. Go ahead, Bill.
I have a 12 Plus now. I'm moving to a 14 because I always try to skip one generation, and I like the better camera.
Go ahead, Tom.
Well, I'm getting the 14 for the camera. I'm also moving my 13 down to the wife and the 12 down to one of the kids.
Yeah. So I cover Apple products for a show. So I'm getting the 14 Pro Max or whatever and I'll be using it to be able to talk about it on Mac Break. And the other excuse is that my wife has a much older phone. I think it's like an 8 or a 10 or something, and the pictures make me sad. So I'm just like, let's get that going. She'll have my 13. All right, next question.
Next question from Triumphant in North Carolina. And Michael asked, I am also a creative. Man, your words hit hard.
Go ahead, Sky, real quick.
Yes, I had to give myself permission, but I also recognized that I was in position to be able to do that. Thank you to my wife. And again, other responsibilities that were taken off my shoulders. So this is a much longer conversation, but I know that in our community that we're looking at what does being a creative look like, the structure of it, but also the sustainability. That's the tricky part.
Tony?
Michael D. Jenkins is triumphant. He was on Conversation with Tony Mobley 2 weeks ago. He is a creative. He issued a challenge during my conversation where he asked for 3 words. He would give you a poem with the 3 words within 24 hours. That option is still there. He did mine. It was fantastic.
That's great. That's great. Next question.
From Douglas Carmichael, what professional level Wi-Fi access point do you recommend? I prefer a command line management interface.
Typically the Ruckus, Cisco, Meraki are the ones that we've used in the past at a kind of an industrial level. Meraki being part of Cisco, but when you're talking about those Ruckus networks, those are the ones that we've seen in the past at most of the events that we work at, or our Cisco Wi-Fi access points. All right. We are changing subjects into our second hour and talking a little bit about NAB. We've just finished IBC, which was great. And NAB is coming up, a little shorter runway, but we're going to talk a little bit about some ideas and brainstorm about what that might look like and how we might want to cover it. We will be putting out a call to action on Monday. So the email that goes out on Monday, if you're interested. So if you listen to this and you're like, well, how do I sign up? Monday will be the day that you can sign up. It'll all come together or not come together in the next week or two, and we'll make a decision. We're still working on whether we're going to have space, at the booth or not, and we're working with some partners on availability, and so we're trying to cut through that right now. Anyway, so that's going to be that's the next step there, but we will be a go no go in about 2 weeks to see what that looks like. I think that we'll probably be a simpler version of this, of what we've done in the past, most likely. And I think that we're going to try to experiment with, each one of these this year has been an experiment, and I think IBC was a great experiment. I think that, all of these have been kind of moving forward. And so we're going to, I want to play with a couple ideas around this, to see what we can decide on, and then as we look at 2023, we can keep on expanding on things and pulling some things forward. And I think what it'll be is the 2023 coverage will be an amalgamation of we liked this, we didn't like that, we liked this, we didn't like that, and we'll find all the little bits and pieces that we start to add to it. Go ahead, Sky.
I'm starting to see patterns in these different events that we're doing, and 2 of them are the department heads seem to be a very successful thing because they have some experience and are willing to take the responsibilities of making choices in their department, and also pushing forward the volunteers of following through. Because again, as a volunteer, there's a different ownership to versus a department head. And the other thing is the integration of the different volunteered equipment has seemed to be a fail point. Consequently, you got really good gear that Noah showed up with, and then Jeff showed up with something else, and then when Greg showed up with something else, it was the integration part of those 3 separate systems that was the fail on the desert bed. But again, it all came together. We just didn't get the rehearsal, right. And that's where the rehearsal at IBC for everybody pushing the system through the day before was huge.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mitchell.
There's a couple of significant reasons why I think we should throw the resources to do this. One of them, it's on the East Coast. We don't do a lot of East Coast events anymore. It's at the Javits Center in New York, so it's very accessible. It's at the transportation hub there. And the other is that it's really done in cooperation with the Audio Engineering Society, AES. So there's a lot of audio-centric stuff going on there. And I guess I would say that if we can get a booth, I think we can lighten up on the heavy lifting on coverage. We can send a lot more stuff to our booth. We might have a few fleet of foot remote coverages, but it might be a good place to test that capability with a booth as our central point of operations.
Yeah, I think that it's only 2 days long, so it's we'd probably have. I probably won't. I almost never cover an event the first day, mostly because it's oftentimes the busiest day, and in addition to that, and it's just hard to deal with people. And the other reason is I need time. I need time to look around a little bit and figure things out, and so that's what we'll kind of have to look at there. I will admit, to Mitchell's point, I have found that the New York NAB, the AES show is actually more compelling than the NAB show. It's maybe it's just my own interest, but the level, the booths, they're nice and small. They're easy to get back and forth to, and they work really well. So I think that we're going to definitely want to cover AES as well as NAB. These are much smaller shows than IBC or Cinegear or NAM. I mean, this will probably be the smallest show from a footprint perspective that we've covered, compared to, I mean, it's big, but it's not anywhere near the size of the shows that we've been working on. I think maybe Cinegear might have been similar size, but these are smaller shows and more digestible. I think that one of the things that at least I'm interested in is, number one is I'm going to see what we can do as far as getting multiple packs to broadcast. So we're going to work on that a little bit and see what's possible. But if we can get multiple backpacks to do the coverage, I think 2 teams worked really well. I think that's something that did work well inside of the inside of what we did there. I may only build one. I mean, depends on what our resources are like, but we may only build one for 2-way. Like where we're really, one is like really like we're going to sit down and have a 2-way conversation with somebody. I think that's a if we have the resources to do IFBs for both, I think that might be something that we can do. But I think having those roam around, my tendency is to lean against, I think that I'd like to have, if we're doing packages, I'd rather just put all the packages up, on the first day, like just put them up on the website and it's something that we can refer back to as panelists. I think that, one thing I'd like to experiment with is to kind of return to a wider panelist group, so that we have a bunch of people able to talk about what we're looking at. And what it does is it allows us to have breaks. So the team doesn't have to be running hard for, I think that what I'm trying to figure out is how the team doesn't have to run hard for 2 hours or whatever, but it can, there's the panelists can sit there and discuss things that are happening and show things and have things that are working, through that process, to make that work. And so that the team can then do it. I also think though, is that, I'd love to experiment with us doing it mostly foot driven as opposed to, tripods and so on and so forth. One of the things that I'd love to see is us just getting a little bit more active with the camera kind of stepping into things and looking at things and then pulling back out. And that's something that is more of a handheld type thing, or at least a monopod type thing to come, to make that actually work. So we'll take a look at whether that's possible or not. We'll see who's available to do that. We may, and so if people are interested in being part of that thing, let us know. We'll be again asking whether people are interested in that process, as far as that, what it looks like. I am working on it. I probably won't know for a little bit more time whether we're going to be able to get space on the ground. If we do, what it does, it gives us somewhere to put things. Number one, and then number two is it gives us a place to sit down and again have some. What happens is at a lot of these conferences we have a lot of people standing around, that are there, and if we can pull them into a 2 or 3 person conversation that's there, and interacting with us, I think that'd be pretty exciting. So we're going to see, what might be possible there. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, I was just going to say, the booth would be really cool. Could we place some of the panelists in the booth? Maybe the panelists should be from the event itself.
Yeah, if there's some panelists that are available and we have a booth, that'd be great to do that. And so the big thing is that again, it just hasn't. I think the one problem that we have right now is that we were really focused on IBC and NAB hasn't really gelled. So we're gonna and some of the things that I've been working on have run into dead ends. So, as far as what might be available. So we're going to see, it may be a little lighter than we've had in the past as far as the prep goes. But, and one of the things you'll find with me is that I tend to be very conservative. So if I feel like, we can't do it well, we'll probably we'll back into a smaller coverage that we can do well, as opposed to probably stretching out too far. I think that the experiment really is trying to figure out a more of a round table for the panelists, as well as a little bit more mobile system to move through things. Go ahead, Mitchell, again.
Yeah, I've actually been in, but I did want to say there's not many of these events that I would be able to cover, and this is one that I could. So I'm kind of eager.
You're saying you're ready to go up?
I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go up there, but I'm not very fleet of foot. So I would love to work from a panel or a booth or something of that nature, because then my feet won't fall off.
Go ahead, Bill.
Alex, you're going to determine it, but I wonder if we only have a limited number of live views, whether putting one in a panel circumstance would be smart as opposed to multiple on the show floor.
I wouldn't use a live view for the studio.
Yeah, and you know well that NAB, the cost of a line into the show floor is astronomical. Right.
That's what we're working on that.
Okay.
So that's part of what we're trying to work on, is something that has a little more bandwidth at the location. And again, that's still a negotiation that we don't quite have solved just yet. And again, this is the beginning of this brainstorm. So we'll keep on talking about it with everyone. And I'm sure it'll gel in. I think that again, the experiment, I think that one of the things that I'd like us to experiment with, because this is a smaller show and easier to get around, is the idea of really trying to give us more of an experience of the show, which is not so much going from one booth to another, but almost walking between some of the booths here and there and having you see things. I really felt that at Cinegear, it was really fun to watch, Guy walking through things and then us going, oh, let's go look at that, and we'll look through that process. And I think that would be something that I'd love to see more of if we can. And again, I think that we'll end up using bits and pieces of everything we've done over this last year as we go into it. But so I'm not so much looking at this NAB as we're going to do something better, but just that we're going to do something different. And then we're going to see because this is a smaller NAB, see what parts of it we like and don't like. I just don't want to replicate anything. I want to do something new so that we can kind of, just figure it out a little bit. Go ahead, Sky.
I'm looking at the map on the website, and yes, Mitchell, it is much smaller. It's only one location, but dead center and highlighted in the map is called the experimental zone, where it has a content theater. And so they're wondering if they're willing to partner with.
Yeah, I mean,
they give us a space.
The theater space is the hardest place to work. It's like anything that is like anything that's going to have experimental content oftentimes is going to be the hardest place for us to do it. And you'll notice as you look at that layout, that it is, again, it's a much more compact, and this one is even more compact than it has been in the past. So, and I've never seen the two of them just stacked on top of each other, AES, and you'll notice that AES is almost the size of NAB. And a lot of these booths are, obviously much smaller. And so I think that makes it, again, with NAB, you can see here, if you look at the layout of it, there's very few booths that are more than 10 by 10, it's a really small booth, and that makes it more apt to do what we were talking about, which is that to just move through one booth after another. And then be able to, I'm hoping to get 2 broadcast units, only because I want to make sure that we can give one a rest and the other one can run, and, so on and so forth. But this is all of NAB New York would fit into one hall at IBC, so it's a much more compact and efficient, place to go. So,
well, and that was Richard's planning ability, is they were able to go in the day before, and they were able to set up appointments and schedule. So they had a very tight thing. Now, the other option too was Mickey was also taking requests from our audience of what booths, and that was kind of the choice of who got on the list.
And you can see that as we're running up to where people have probably made all the decisions they're making. If you look at the very top of that, all those booths are available. That's what I'm trying to get a hold of. just to be clear, like there's a whole bunch of booths at the very top that are all 10 by 10s and 20 by 10s and everything else, and they're all empty. So anyway, so that's what we're trying to see if we can get somewhere we can park. But we'll see if that's possible or not. I think that would be really great, because then we could do a lot of stuff, and then it would also give us an opportunity to experiment both there and here with things like Zoom ISO. Like I want to put Zoom ISO on the stage so that when we're talking to someone in this area, you're seeing people pop up on screens and so on and so forth. And so there could be a lot of really interesting ways to architect this. So we'll see what shakes out. I think part of this brainstorming is to think about what we want to ask for. But I think that a high-speed line to a booth is one piece of that. And then being able to build a very light kit, that we can roll in there. But it would be, again, I think this is one that might be more efficient and again, it's just not very big. Like it won't take very long to cover it. And I think that because there's so many small booths, my inclination is to plan more for being agile than plan for, big, heavy, I don't necessarily know that we'll know a couple places that we want to go and look at things, but I think a lot of it will be kind of a little bit more of just walking around and seeing what we have. And the first day is studying that and getting an idea. Again, I don't need, I will admit that my approach to this after 25 years of doing it is that I don't make very many appointments. Like I walk up and I've got a camera crew, and if you don't pay attention, I'll just talk about it and then I'll walk on. And show things. I don't like dealing with the PR teams generally. There's a handful of them that I know really well that'll be flexible with me, but I'm just happy to talk to it. Now we have to see if we have people that are going to be on the ground that are happy to do that. But if we do, then it's, if we have people that are ready to riff, and just talk about what they see and answer questions about it. I enjoy that a lot more than oftentimes talking to the PR folks or to someone that's there. If they want to do that, that's fine. But a lot of times we just roll up and go to a camera and go to a thing and then talk to the details about it. And if we can get somebody there to stand with us and answer some questions if we need it, that's great. But usually what happens is I try to I spend more time studying all the details of a booth and knowing what I want to talk about than I do, and trying to put context on it than I do interviewing somebody from a booth. And that's just because I found that, at least the way, again, for many of these shows, I was doing 40 segments a day. So at that volume, you can't make appointments. Like you go to it, you suck up the information from the person, you spit it out in front of camera, and then you move on. And literally I'd forget what I'd said within 2 booths. It was, you just kind of, it's a very, and I find that to be a really exhilarating way to do it. But it does take some practice, and we'll have to see who's willing to jump into that approach. It is something that takes a little time to get used to, but I'd like us to experiment with that a little bit if possible. Again, not as a better solution, but as a different one, so that we can just because I think that the answer is going to be somewhere in between the tripods, the tanks, the studio, the handhelds. I mean, I think that's going to be the future, but I think the opportunity here is to be a little bit more agile and just run with it to make that happen. Let's go to the next question.
Laura Thompson in Beaumont, Texas. What does your ideal community engagement look like for these shows?
So I have to admit that what I really loved about the IBC one, probably my favorite thing was us asking questions of experts that were there. And I love the fact that someone from the panel could ask that question and the person could answer it directly. And I thought that was kind of magical. So I think that again, I will tend to not try to do more than I can do. So I'd probably only have one kit that could do that, unless we really have enough. If a lot of people volunteer, we'll go more crazy, than this. But if we have, depending on how big the teams are, I think that's really great. I think that getting questions in for that. I think one of the things that I'm going to talk to Chris about is the concept of clearing the questions in the panel view quickly, like just hit a button and they all just disappear, so that we can go to a booth and people can start pushing. We just have to be very clear that it's very momentary, because we have to get to a point where we can see the questions as fast. Like, we're in this booth. There's not going to be a lot of tags. Like, you can tag a booth. Like, we can tell you that we're going to this booth, and then we can there's a couple that we know we'll go to, so we'll have those tags. But outside of that, we have to be able to let people have kind of a momentary, like, we're now at this booth, we're going to be here for 6 or 8 minutes. People can shuffle questions in that they have of that booth, and then we're going to move on. and we have to clear that. Whatever we didn't get to, we'll clear out and move on to the next one. So having people be able to post those questions in, I think, and I think that we could. I mean, one of the things I'm trying to think through is the potential of having us be able to have people we could tag all the booths and then let people like put in what they want. I got to think about that a little bit, like which one, and so then we could look at how many questions there are for different booths, and that might drive us a little bit as opposed to trying to figure it out ahead of time, and so, but there's definitely some obvious ones that we'll go to, but I think some of that stuff we'll find when we're on the ground. And again, most of the time I've done it, I've just walked around and said, I want to do this and this and this. I make a list and then I just go back and do them all. So we'll see. But I think that the two-way worked way better than I thought it would, to be honest. And so if we can find ways to do the two-way, and then being able to be very responsive where the audience can ask questions in real time. When I did this at NAB with a live view, and this was 15 years ago, I walked around, and poor Doug Dalton walked around with me with a camera, and we did this for probably 4 hours straight with no stops, no breaks, no nothing. We just did 4 hours of just walking around, and I just had somebody in my ear watching literally a V bulletin, and people were posting questions, and then she was reading into my ear what the questions were, and I would just ask the person the questions, and it was it worked pretty well. So I think we can do a lot better than that now. So I think that we'll figure out how to do that. But I think that I love the two-way, but I do think that we could be feeding things into people's ears as well of like what the questions are that are coming from here. I don't know. I have to figure out the process of what that sounds like for the broadcast. Like, is it going to be someone that's ask him, or we have somebody just in comms reading the next question, to me, or me having if I have a good enough internet, just having a tablet and looking at the next question from there. So we're going to kind of play with that of how that works. And of course, the challenge is always the bandwidth there, to make sure that actually is going to work. Next question.
From David Brady in New York. New York, I plan to be at the show. If I can work out being a part of it all, count me in. Otherwise, consider me an activity coordinator.
Yeah, go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, I'm up for having my brother from another mother, David Brady. We could pair up and be quite the force to be reckoned with. We are the East Coast, so we'll represent.
Yeah, no, I think we'll try to drag David into some reindeer games. Absolutely. Next question.
Tom Ferguson in Phoenix, Arizona. Previous show coverage has utilized equipment primarily provided by the individuals. Are we planning to build up an OH equipment inventory to augment the future coverage?
I think that's the idea. I mean, so far we just don't have any budget to do that, but we have. But I'm going to see what we can supply on our end to make sure that we have some coverage that's there. So we were able to get, Live View was kind enough to lend us a backpack in addition to the one that Accidental Theater had. Lectrosonic was able to lend us some wireless as well. So those kinds of things have been helpful, and we're going to see what else we can drum up from partners, as well as things that I might be able to supply or own, I know may be able to supply as well. So we're taking a look at all of those things to see what we can do as far as hardware goes. Go ahead, Sky.
Well, Ken came over from London to IBC. Wouldn't he actually be closer to New York than we are from California?
But he can't drive his camper over there. It's not an amphibious unit. So that's a big, okay. Once Ken gets it, I know that Ken will get there where he can he can take a slow boat, literally.
Throw the boat. You've thrown the gauntlet down now.
Yeah, Ken, we expect that your mobile home to go amphibious for us. And then we'll see Ken there parked outside.
3 weeks. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. All right, next question.
I got a question. Maybe NAB New York is a chance to build a light version of office hours coverage.
I think that's what we're leaning towards right now. And so I think it'll be a lighter coverage than we've done in the past. But parts of it will probably work better, and parts of it will not. That's the typical nature of it. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael asked, with panelists at the event, could they access the back-end applications they need from a mobile device?
We'll find out. I will say that in general, Javits has been pretty good about the bandwidth. It's because of where it's placed. It doesn't have as many. It's right at the end against the water. And because of that, the cell coverage actually is better in Javits than most places. There's a lot more cell towers around it. There's not as many buildings around it. It's actually we have a better chance of I know that I've done a lot of shows in that space, like a lot. And we've never had any cell phone issues. In fact, we've streamed from our phones, at the venue. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it used to be a huge problem at NAB when there was 140,000 people there getting cellular bandwidth, but cellular has improved remarkably. And I agree with you. This is not as big and it's much more isolated circumstance. So I would keep my fingers crossed. I think we might be able to get some wireless out via cell phones from there.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
I don't mean to put you on the spot, Alex, but this would be the event for you to show up for.
We'll see. So I'm not going to.
That's good enough. I'll take that.
I think that what I'd rather do on this event specifically is to be the host from or co-host or panelist or whatever it is, whoever wants to do this. And again, it'll depend on who volunteers when we put it out or who's going to do what. But I think that this one I kind of want to watch from the outside. There are some circumstances that would have me show up, so we'll see what that looks like. But I'm kind of aiming more for next year for that. I just have a lot of moving parts in October. And I really hate to travel, like in a way that it's hard to, really hard to describe how much I hate getting on a plane. So I do it, but it's like literally I'm not sure if I wouldn't prefer to have one of my fingernails pulled out. Anyway, so next question.
Ouch. Tom Ferguson from Phoenix, Arizona, volunteering to cover on one of these shows comes at considerable personal time and expense. How can the office hours community best support these volunteers?
Well, I think that, we're depending on who volunteers and how it's volunteering, how it looks, we may see if people want to chip in for it. That we are a 501c3 now. People can donate money to it, where we put an ear tag on it. Like if you want to donate to the NAB coverage, people can throw some money into it, and we'll see what we can do as far as helping. I think that at first, I don't think we're going to be able to afford to pay for flights or hotels or other things like that. So I think it has to be kind of local and what people are up to. But I would like to, be able to make sure they have the right equipment. That they have food, like those kinds of things. But we have to be kind of, these things get to be, it's not something I think we can underwrite yet, but if we do a good job, it keeps on, the goal is to start taking on adding more resources to it slowly as we prove that we can do it with the resources that we have. So I think that I have a dream somewhere in the future, if we're doing these coverages well, that there is a lot of people's flights, hotels, food, all that stuff is managed, that we have really good equipment to do what we do, that we probably have a core paid staff that is managing it, and then volunteers that want to be part of it as well. And that those are, that's where we're trying to get to. We just don't have the resources to do that yet. So but us doing really good work, and every one of these so far has jumped forward. I think that, as we have success, I think that there's a better chance to get there, but it's still a bit of a ways in front of us. Next question.
From Alex 4D Golner in London, UK, should the NAB recording be chunked into individual interviews?
I think we could. I think that I do think that we're going to. What I'd like to do is on the first day, and even part of the second day, but really on the first day, that we shoot a lot of little individual segments. This depends on how many people volunteer to actually go. I don't think that we need to, after doing this for, again, a long time, I don't think those segments need to be very complicated. In fact, I think that they can be done with one person with a cell phone with the most important part of doing segments is the mic. So mic and camera operation. And I got to a point after doing it with camera operators, doing it with teams of, 10 people, doing it with teams of 2 people, 3 people, that my strong preference ended up being a single take point of view with a good mic, pointing and talking about the subject that I'm talking about. Like this is what this is, and I point over here, this is what's good, and then look at this, and then look at this, and then I point at it, and then I move on. And I found that it worked. For volume, because we one of the things we want to be careful of is there are a couple hundred booths if we cover 8 of them, we don't really give people the full value of what we had, all those things that are there. So the quantity turns out to be better, more important than the quality, in my opinion. Like, we want it to be a certain level of quality. But the phones are pretty good at this point at doing that. And so having that, being able to step that up, and I think that that's what I'd like to experiment with some of these, is not trying to do big things, but really showing people what these things are, from the booth, and being a little bit more fast and furious. I don't, as I've said before, I don't really, for segments, I don't believe in 2 camera shoots. And I don't believe in editing them. Like, I believe in one take. And that's why I don't like including people at the booth, because if I don't like my take, I just do it again. Like, I just do it. I just do it again. And it's much faster for me to do it 2 or 3 times than it is to edit it. And so what I strongly prefer for these kinds of things is a single take point of view with a good mic, and then we slap an open and close on it. We might put some lower thirds and some little highlights if we have time. But the idea is to make it and then I think that those segments aren't necessarily rolled into the show. I think we just build a shelf that is the NAB coverage, and we throw all of those segments into that inside of office hours. Just throw a whole bunch of these quick segments in. It informs our audience, and it means the panelists have things to talk about the next day, so that we don't have to, we can have live coverage wandering around, but there's still a ton of stuff that we already showed. And we can talk about, hey, look at the segment here, look at what we were talking about there. And we can bring those up and talk about what those might mean. So it gives us a way to contextually have a conversation as well. But I do think if those individual interviews turn out well as self packages, I think we could definitely chunk them up. I'm open to that. Next question.
From Douglas Carmichael, Mickey made an excellent show planning spreadsheet for IBC. Will we do the same for NAB and share it so we can all learn from it?
I'm sure we'll be doing some planning for NAB. We'll figure out how we're going to plan it for this, and we'll definitely publish anything that we plan. Next question.
Juan C. Robles in Mexico City, Mexico asks, is there any plan to have a behind the scenes of the crews on the show?
Go ahead, Bill.
Well, I don't think video is the right way to do that, only because you end up with a whole bunch of stuff that's really useful. I mean, if you're actually showing the audience the travel between 2 booths, having a secondary camera crew filming the crew doing that is kind of useless. I would recommend trying to identify somebody as a BTS still photographer, and whether they do a phone or a DSLR or something, to get a lot of specific shots about this is what that looked like. Here's a product. Let's get a close-up of it. Those kind of things are really easy, and one person dedicated to that gets you a lot better coverage than just grabbing people's cell phone shots after the fact.
Go ahead, Sky.
And you'll have to check with Mickey on this, but I think there was a behind the scenes on Unity as well. So there was some kind of a follow-up. And I only know that because somebody said they were fascinated to hear all of the dialogue and the banter that was going on, and the anxiety, but then the resolutions that were happening at the same time. There was an education.
Yeah, and I think that that we are we're going to have an option for people when they volunteer to be a BTS crew. So I do want to have a crew that's just dedicated to BTS, that all they're doing is documenting what we're doing, because that makes it easier to sell it to people who want to help us do it. so it's we'll be looking for people who don't necessarily want to work on the stress of the show, aren't ready to be in front of the camera, but are in New York and would love to just take pictures and behind the scenes and so on and so forth. So we'll try to get that as well. Next question.
Alex 4D Golner in London, UK. Is anyone determining the proportion of live views versus playback after the show?
After the show versus playback, portion of live view. I think during the show, my recommendation, and this will be up to the team that works on it, but my recommendation would be to have it almost all live, like almost no, for this experiment specifically, that we're going to stay in a live experience almost the whole time. Where we're, and that will depend on a couple of different bits and pieces. We may have a couple playbacks here and there to make that work for glue. But outside of that the idea is that a lot of the VOD stuff would go into a shelf, and then the rest of it is live, and it's kind of taking questions and talking about it. And we have now this person, and then we have this, and we have this. And so we'll play with that a little bit. And some of this will depend on some resources that we're trying to sort out over the next week. Next question.
Nate Hill in Salt Lake City. The Javits Center is a strictly union facility. Does that add any concerns to the planning?
It doesn't, actually. The press, we usually get away with most of this stuff. I don't think we've ever had to put, if we put the studio up, if it's particularly big, we might have some issues. But most likely we will use some version of a PTZ camera. We're probably not going to use operated camera, so that will be pretty small. And, we'll keep it at it'll be pretty light, kit. And so anyway, so I don't think we've never had a union issue unless we built a big studio that, there. So if it's something that's light, some people are on a table with some PTZs, usually we get away with it at union facilities without any real trouble. They don't, and definitely people wandering around, that happens constantly with press. So it's just when you start building up a big staff that it becomes more problematic. And the funny thing about Javits is that it's not even the camera union. It's not even the electricians union runs the cameras in Javits. It's so crazy. Anyway, but we're going to probably not. We'll keep it pretty simple. If we do a studio, it won't look like a big old production. But you're right. If we did, we would have to do something bigger. And we'd have to hire union for that, which is one of the reasons that we'll keep this late, just because we don't have the money for that structure. Next question.
Joachim Berens from Delphi, the Netherlands. Do you need some kind of a broadcasting license or approval from NAB to record these segments for this community?
Good, Bill.
Generally not. Alex has been going to NAB on a press pass for decades, as have I. They know kind of, if they look up who are these guys who want to come in and do this, they're going to find long records of us doing this kind of work forever, and many other people who are involved in office hours. So once they get to know you, like Future Media Concepts, I think is again the vendor for the things. We know those people too. So they're going to go, it's them. We know them. We know that they're serious, and it should smooth everything over.
Yeah, we haven't had too much trouble. I have to admit that I usually have a collection of badges for these when I go. I have an exhibitor badge. I find that having the exhibitor badge, the speaker badge, and the press badge, and you just flip through whichever access that you need is the one that you flip over to. So anyway, so we'll work on getting. But for a lot of these, I used to pay for all this stuff and try to or get ahead of it. And now, I mean, for 90% of the shows that I've covered, I just walk in because I don't go with very much heavy kit. I just walk in with a hand, again, I cover most things now with cell phones, but we'll do more than that in live views. And if you walk in with a live view backpack, we've never had anybody stop us and even look at what we were doing. But we will work on getting some press passes. That won't be a problem. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael, will we have a breakout room where we can listen to comms and behind the scenes from the NAB coverage? Yeah, we'll definitely have that. So we'll figure that out. I think that we will be, if we get the live views, we will be home running them back to our office here in San Francisco or in San Rafael. So we'll be kind of hubbing it here. And we are going, the other experiment, in addition to being very light and running around and doing things, the other experiment will be at least HDR 4K. So that's why we need to do it through our system. So that's part of the experiment, is that it'll be lighter coverage, but heavier video. And so we'll be kind of upgrading, we're trying to get a bunch of stuff done over the next couple of weeks to make sure that we have what's in place to do that. And if we can get away with it, we're going to try 5.1, but we're going to see if we've got some ideas on how to kind of create a surround experience if you are, where you can kind of hear the audio, hear people around you to do those kinds of things. Go ahead, Mitchell. Can't you use like a Biosonics or an ambisonic microphone?
We're looking at that, yeah. So that you can kind of, obviously the mic would be coming down the center, but we can play around. We might try to experiment with that process. Go ahead, Sky.
Yeah, I was just looking at the numbers, and we're at 1,300 that have viewed the IBC event, and the normal daily shows are averaging, 300 to 500. This is just the YouTube stats, and you have the stats much deeper than I do, but I'm just looking at what I'm seeing. And so there was a lot of interest in the content. So I'm listening to your style as far as the quality and quantity equation, and I think people would like to see a lot more. Then back to Alex's point, each of those different booths could be chunked out and ID'd of.
Right. And again, I think that we would, I think that we want to, again, I'm a big fan of getting a lot of content out the day before, through the night based on a global, depending on how many people volunteer for doing post. But again, my goal is that the post is very, take Alex Gollner's approach to this, where we're going to, build things that are ahead of time and that are all pre-done. If we find people that are volunteering that are Final Cut folks, we put stuff into motion. It's all we got to do is type names in, type a couple things in and it pops open. And then we have heads and tails on them. And then we put them up on the, real quick heads and tails. And then we put them up on the YouTube channel. And I think that you'll find that the numbers could get pretty big.
Yeah.
The segments that we do will be much more viewed typically. I mean, I don't know what will happen with ours, but in the past, segments related, especially well-shot segments about a product related to it. When I say well-shot, it's really about camera dexterity. And I learned this, I was really, where I really changed my tune was when I watched, we did a lot of work in the early days with Justine Ezerick, or otherwise known as iJustine. And Justine is a master of using her camera. Like she can frame, reframe, turn around to her, turn back to them. Everything's properly framed the whole time. And I was like, oh, I got to get good at that. To be able to do it, because she does a lot of stuff on her own. She does bigger stuff now, and she's using red cameras and all kinds of other stuff. But watching her do that and watching how skilled she was, I realized I could do some of that. And so I started taking it on. And then I found it to be, you do have to think about it. You're thinking about, like, I'm going to lean forward to this, and then I'm going to go down. Like, it's not that I just shoot things like handheld, like a home movie. I look at the booth, I walk through it, I look at what all the bits and pieces are. I think I'm going to go to here, to here, to here, to here, to here. I usually start on the sign. Like I just lean up to their sign and then come down to what they're doing, and then I zoom into what I want to look at. And I found that that it was I even did ones with glass, where I just then I had both my hands, so I could say, okay, take a video, and then I just I would just start being able to hold things. And there's no camera system right now that does that very well at the moment, but it was really useful. But I think that yeah. Next question.
Next question for Laura Thompson in Beaumont, Texas. What are you thinking about the length of the broadcast? Playouts give the back-end crew a break. There's
other ways to give the back-end crew a break. So one is I do think that the experiment that I want to try here is to have a much larger panel and have us really talking to things that we're noticing at NAB, talking about contextually about why those things are important. So there's coverage from NAB, but if the team needs a break, it's going to be more of a doing what we normally do. I think that in talking through those things, as opposed to building it up to where it's a high stress situation. So especially folks on the crew will have time to get ready to go. Okay, now we're ready to go to here, but we can talk in between that. To make that actually happen. So, and again, I think right now, partially because so much energy was put into IBC, which I think was great, is that, we're going to go a little lighter. We may just use, may change some of the graphics, but may use a more vanilla version of what we do every day, and then add IBC to that, as opposed to trying to build an entirely separate broadcast, for it. And so we'll, and add that as part of downstream, and that part of that's figuring that out. So, well, it depends on who volunteers and how much resources we have to work with. But I think that we're going to do what we can do well, going into NAB. And again, I think IBC, we rightfully spent an enormous amount of energy on, but the two of them being close enough together, I think that we're going to, NAB will be a little bit more basic, and more interesting in some other ways. Next question.
From Douglas Carmichael, do the live view units support comms and return video?
They support comms. I don't think that they do return video. They might. The newer ones might. I don't know for sure, but I'm not. They do. I'm pretty sure that they definitely support comms as a return, and I think that worked really well in the last one. Next question.
Alex 4D Gollner in London, UK. Would it be a good idea to capture video packages not specific to a booth, such as general comments from the attendees on a given question, or quick chats with people at an industry gathering?
Go ahead, Sky.
That's been the community concept that was discovered, again, accidentally. It was following somebody around that was there. And Bill really brought that out. So consequently, I would hope so. And also I wanted to make sure that we're aware that we do have a digital bucket now in LucidLink. So we've got that concept of a hub for a global editorial to get access to.
Again, I think that we want to take full advantage of that. I think that that's going to be, especially the day before, building all these segments is just people uploading. And again, I think that if we can figure out a way where people can get good enough bandwidth to upload those things from their phones and so on and so forth, I think that, again, I'm really interested in a lot of content, from these things, because the real opportunity is the thing that I'll lean against probably for this experiment, again, and this is just this experiment, is if we look at someone and go, well, what I'm really interested in are things that are people that probably couldn't fill a second hour, that we could go into but we do want to show these products that are there. But I do think that we want to have a LucidLink set up where people are uploading things and they're getting bounced around and we're building packages. But I want to be careful. My opinion after doing this for a couple decades is that the quantity is really important, like really, really important. Quantity of the reason that we brought all these things together, the big advantage of a conference is to get 30, 40, 50 segments out of it. And if we have enough people on the ground and having them all work on it, like going out and finding the cool things, as opposed to, I think that, we used to spend a lot of time on each booth, but that was almost 20 years ago. And we just slowly worked away from that because I felt like you were at a conference, there's all these booths. Like I can, if it's just, if it's 12, what I used to do is about 12 to 15, but I realized I can do segments about them. I can just have them over. I mean, I was in San Francisco at the time and do segments about that. What I'm really interested in is really kind of a light touch of lots of things. Go ahead, Bill.
I was just going to say, one of the things we haven't yet, because we just had so many limited things and so many things to check off, is some roving people there who can do the true color commentary. I mean, I'd love to be able to have a little tiny segment. It's just like, we're at the, what do you eat at a conference like this? Well, we're looking at the menu board, and yes, nachos are up to $14.95. Right. That's a little weird. Back to you. And
it might be
flavor thing.
I have to admit that I'm a heavy protein person. So as long as those segments are really short, it's okay to experiment with them. I get really, like as a viewer, I get really edgy when I get something other than what I tuned in for. But I don't know if I'm representative of all the viewers. Go ahead.
I think it has to be done with taste, but if somebody's on the second level going, attendance this year is about 75,000 and this is what it looks like from an on-high view. Back to you guys. Those kind of things can really give you a sense of, I was there.
Well, and one of the things I do want to do is find places where we can take a camera crew and have them looking down on something, or even if they're taking video and we play it, is just taking a 5-minute video of an overhead shot and then even uploading it, and then we just play it and we just cut to it while we need a break or something. Or even while we're talking, it just shows the kind of a wide shot of that. Go ahead, Sky.
Well, I'm curious, again, shooting it, downloading it, uploading it. I'm wondering if you could get people to do a live YouTube, and then that could be scraped and pulled in by the crew. Get your that way they send it up to a live YouTube, and then the quality is pretty rough on that. It'll break up as a live thing. So I think a store and forward is probably a better solution. We just have to figure out what technology we want to use for that. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, I want to add to what Bill was saying. I like the idea of a little off-center, here's the stuff you didn't necessarily speak of. It's not specifically equipment, but somebody interesting in the crowd, a public figure that is an inventor or somebody that's well-known in the audio industry. That would be fun, and I'd like to do it because I think I could do off-center stuff.
There we go. Next question.
Next question in from Paul Shadwell in Turbenthal, Switzerland. I'm getting married on the 14th. Paul is, by the way. And then the following week on honeymoon, so he won't be available for helping with graphics this time. Sorry about that. Question, will the issues with SPX be resolved for NAB?
What were the issues with SPX? I don't remember what the issues were. Again, I think that we'll use some graphics. I think that it depends on how far we go and who volunteers. Oh, it said there was no SBX issues for IBC. It was a deck link issue, but I don't know exactly what that is. So we'll take a look at what those look like. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael asked, how will we be managing a distributed team of editors for roll-ins and packages?
Well, I think we're going to talk to look at the other teams and talk about what, who wants to do what. And then I think LucidLink will definitely be part of it. We definitely need someone to be a producer for those things that will keep track of it, a producer and probably a couple coordinators. So if you're interested in doing that type of work, that'll be an option. And again, we'll be sending out a call to action on Monday for people to decide whether it's something they want to do. Go ahead, Sky.
And we're not reinventing the wheel of structure. Again, Jonas and Mickey and Josh have done a lot of structure foundational work for filling in some of these things. And again, Noah, I credit for making sure that we've got a lead that is helping to do that. So we're not completely reinventing the wheel, but now finding the people that are willing to take on those responsibilities. That's in the works.
Next question.
Kenny Hampton in Greenville, Illinois, With IBC just behind us, do you anticipate more new vendor announcements? Will IBC/NAB interview redundancy exist?
I'll go ahead, Mitchell.
It could, but I think this is more of an audio-centric type program because of AES. So I think you're going to have a lot of audio-related stuff, or they might have pushed it off to make those announcements. So I'd be interested to hear what, Sound Devices and Telos and people like that have to say.
Yeah, and I was just looking at, I don't know. Wow. I'm very curious. I'm just looking at the map right now. That's a little scary. Like almost everything that I roll over for AES is available. I've never seen that before. Yeah. So I don't know how much coverage we'll have there. I mean, if it's not, I'm going to have to call some folks and figure out what's going on there, because there's like 4 booths for AES right now. So, there's a whole bunch of booths that are available. But again, this gets back to why I think if I can get a hold of the right people, we can get a booth space. Like it's just a matter of, I think that we can do some stuff there. Go ahead, Bill.
Well, in the old days, I don't know if it's still as much, but product announcements were timed with some of these big shows. And so it may be that even if you've been at, let's say, the Zoom booth at IBC, there may be some new initiative or some new announcement from Zoom at NAB New York, and there might be another major announcement at in Las Vegas. So you really have to pay ears to the ground and figure out who's announcing what at the show. There will always be some announcements worth covering, I think.
And again, the way I cover a lot of this stuff is not so much through the announcements or major announcements. It is really just all the cool things that are there. Like we didn't spend much time at Everett's, 4A, Ross. We spent a little time at Ross, although that's one part where I think we labeled it. Multi-Dine, Rode and Schwartz, all these things are things we haven't shown. And I think that there's a whole show there without any announcements. That we can build. I'm not too worried about that. Next question.
Next question in from Hashid Trivedi from Daytona Beach. Would this be a great time to also gain more people in the industry from the New York area, aside from our friends such as David Brady?
I think we're hoping that more people from the New York area will jump in. We'll see how that goes. Announcement, call to action goes out Monday. Next question.
Next question is coming in from Kenny Hampton in Greenville, Illinois. Any seminar events at NAB occurring which could be broadcast? Would this be of interest to your audience, not unlike office hours, second hour delving into a bit deeper to content?
I'm interested in that if we can ask questions. like I'm not putting a camera in the back of a seminar is like kind of it's exactly what I don't like to do. So I probably wouldn't do that unless we can do it as us talking over top of it, or us adding more context, or us doing something else. I've specifically gone to a lot of sessions at different NABs and IBCs, and I had a hard time listening to them while I was in them, like in the room. I think it would be harder for me to watch them over Zoom. Next question. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, next question here. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's more of a
No,
comment
we just
for
skipped
me.
one. We just skipped one. Hold on.
That's all right. We got it. The lack of exhibitors for AES may be a concern for our planning. You just started looking at the chart there, and if there's only 4, doesn't that kind of bode badly for the AES part of it?
It does right now. So we'll kick around, and I'm going to kick around and ask some folks about that. Again, one of the issues that we have, and one of the things we're seeing here, is that a lot of vendors that I'm talking to aren't going. Like they're just not going to any of them. They're not going to CES. They're not going to NAB. They're just not. It's not penciling out for them. They've been able to. They adjusted during COVID. The prices have gone way up. The flights, the hotels, the setup costs, everything else has gone up. And so a lot of them are not doing it. And the problem for audio is that the supply of analog to digital converters has been a brutal problem, that a lot of them just don't have new products, to show, that they need to promote, because they, and so what we are seeing, and this is why I'm trying to get a booth. It doesn't mean that those companies aren't in New York for this show. It just means that they're not getting a booth, and so I'm hoping to find a place where we can bring people to talk, at the thing, and as part of the coverage. Like if they're in the building, we can see if we can get a hold of them. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, you just mentioned what I thought might be a solution is if we have the booth, then we don't necessarily have to go out to all the other booths if there's roaming people around that have stuff or they're industry professionals that we could talk to.
That's why I want to get a booth, is so that we can bring people to us, as well as, because even, again, this is a good example, even, I'm just looking at the map right now, like half of the NAB space is empty, like when you zoom in on it. So I think that hopefully someone will spring us some space.
It could be a deal buster for us if we can't get it.
We'll cover it one way or the other. Just how heavy we cover it. Go ahead, Bill.
Well, in the traditional broadcast space, one of the things I used to use was a lot of segment producers, who were the people who went out and found interesting things at a show like this to bring back to the central stage and do. We haven't really been set up that way. We usually have a crew with 1 or 2 and maybe somebody who works as a producer, but they usually stay with the group and you find them kind of on the floor. I don't know whether there's enough people or any sense in trying to do that, but it's a specified job. It's a kind of personality who can go out and talk to a booth person and say, can you find somebody really good, and can I take them over and we're going to do an interview with them? It's a specific job.
Yeah, and we've done a lot of that in the past, where we just have a stand up and someone goes and grabs people and brings them in, or sets them up, and we say, hey, we want to do a segment here, and here, and they go out and find them. And again, what I have found is that I find it much easier to do it in real time, like do it the day before, rather than try it weeks before. You're talking to lots of PR people, and you can try to get that working out. The day before, you walk up to the booth and go, hey, can we bring somebody? I just need one of your operators or one of your whatever to come over at this time. And if they don't do it, you find another one. Usually you can find people, especially smaller booths. And again, the thing that I love is going to these things and finding the things that we're not going to see normally. That we're gonna, the Sprig one was the Sprig one, and I bought the Oyen drives, and I bought a bunch of other things that were there. So I think that, I found that, little booths are really something that I find very fascinating. So we'll take a look at that. But yeah, we have to figure out. I did expect to do more heavy work on AES until I looked at this map this morning, and literally, I don't know if they're doing it. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know what's happening. I'm confused. I will say that, like, there is nothing. Like, there's literally nothing in the AES area. So I don't know whether they decided to just move it all. Maybe they're all in IBC now. I mean, or NAB. I don't know. Or maybe they're just not updating it. That could be the case too. It's like, it's just not updated yet. In 2 weeks, it'll be full. So we'll take a look at that. All right. That was a good segment. About halfway through, I thought, we're going to run out of questions or comments, but we did not. So really well done by the producers. Again, call to action. We'll figure out what we can and can't do, largely from the call to action on Monday, to find out what you all think that you're up for. And again, we'll be either robust or conservative based on who shows up and how they show up and so on and so forth. But I do want to kind of again experiment, in this one to see what other things we can do before we go into 2023, when we probably are going to get a little bit more structured, about these processes. So yeah, very fun. Great work by the producers. Yeah, go
By
ahead.
the way, Mickey posted a floor plan. Seems a bit more filled out, almost completely full.
So maybe the NAB, good. That means that just NAB hasn't updated their side of it. So they're not getting updates from AES. Good. That
I don't see any empty booths in AES on this floor plan at Mickey.
Excellent. So maybe the one that we're looking at here in general might be just not, maybe New York is not updated. They're not updating their data. So anyway, so we'll take a look at that. That's great news. So I was a little worried about that process. So anyway, I think that we'll be at least half audio, if not more, because the AES is really a lot of fun. Usually the tools that I'm the most interested in are usually on that side for New York. I think that it's usually a pretty good show. All right, thanks to our producers for all the great questions and comments, and we'll keep on discussing these parts of the puzzle. And of course, thanks to the panelists. We can't do this without you, and can't do it without the great crew on the back end making all of this come together. It's a complicated thing. For those of you watching, there's a small village that lights up every morning to make this all happen, and it's a lot of work over not just during the show, but before the show, after the show, during the show, and you'll get a chance soon to be able to listen to all of that as we go through it. So stay tuned for that. All right, and we're going to now jump into After Hours.
Hey, speaking of that, I didn't acknowledge all the work Josh did yesterday for my show, and I just wanted to say thank you publicly to him. He worked his tail off to get that word cloud stuff going, and without all the people on the back end, these things don't happen. So thanks, Josh, and thanks everyone.
Now we're going to go to After Hours. Oh, I spoke over top of it when I should have been whispering. It went dark. Oh, I did a Mitch. I Mitched it. We don't have a Tlaloc traversal. I don't see it. I'm looking for the Tlaloc traversal, but I can't find it. I don't know if we covered very much space. I don't know how many miles we got out of this deal. We'll see.
There it is, 117,000 miles. Wow. I was holding my breath under every bridge.
Yeah, but the AES version of this is much more filled out than the yeah. There's still a lot of open space, but not as much.